My theory examines the idea Britney Spears is imprisoned and exploited for money by her father. Now, it might surprise you a bit from my monotonic dull voice, but I'm actually a big fan of Britney's music.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it a lot, yeah. It's catchy,
Fair enough.
sing along. In some ways, she was probably the Miley Cyrus of our generation, but more famous. She blew up, she had controversial music, many hated her, many loved her. She also had some raunchy videos, with the music video for Toxic arguably being her version of Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. Obviously, Britney's came first, and then ended up spiraling into craziness with stunts including shaving all her hair off.
Yeah, another parallel is she started on Disney Channel as well. And so
Yeah,
did Miley Cyrus.
exactly. So before actually delving into this conspiracy, just a bit of a brief background into Britney Spears. So Britney Spears was born in 1982 in Mississippi, United States, to an English Maltese American family. Billboard ranked her as the eighth biggest artist of the noughties, and she has sold over 100 million records worldwide. As mentioned, she was born in Mississippi, and Mississippi is a strongly socially conservative evangelical Protestant state in the so-called Bible Belt in America, where a lot of people are stereotyped as extremely Bible loving, anti gay, misogynistic, and etc. You get the drift. Kind of like in NASCAR, which is also popular. As John mentioned, she got her big break in December 92, where she was cast in the Mickey Mouse Club alongside big names such as Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, Ryan Gosling, and Kerry Russell.
I didn't know that Ryan Gosling started off on Disney.
That's a pretty famous, class. Aguilera, Timberlake, Gosling. I
Yeah,
personally
they've
not
all done very
Kerry
well.
Russell, but
No, I haven't.
Shows how much I know, how in touch I am.
surprised you're not in touch with the 1992 Mickey Mouse Club, Callum.
Well, no, actually, yeah, it was completely before my time.
She released her debut studio album in 1998, Hit Me Baby One More Time, and the rest is history. And no, Callum, Hit Me Baby One More Time isn't in ode to Stan Collymore.
Ooh,
Oh,
very touchy.
Could be construed like that, though. There's lots of double meanings in songs, especially pop songs.
yeah, I think a lot of people do pour their emotions into their songs. I mean, I haven't really delved too deeply into the lyrics of Hit Me Baby One More Time. I only really know the chorus. So from the top of my head, Hit Me Baby One More Time, she says, my loneliness is killing me. And then she sings about being hit. So could link into the theory she's trapped. But at the same time, if she's being trapped by the management and her father, they surely wouldn't let her release the song.
Yeah, very extreme case of Stockholm Syndrome.
Very extreme. It's worth noting the idea that Britney is being controlled dates us back as early as the Mickey Mouse Club when she was just 9 years old. At the time, she was told her voice was too alike to Christine Aguilera's, so she must change it. She was on a babyish singing voice, which went down a hit, but was very hard to replicate in future life. And apparently this is often why she is forced to lip sync by her management, as she just can't really nail the singing voice she's become famous for.
Yeah, I have seen footage of her singing like before she was big, and she was actually quite good.
Yeah. So for years, she tried to actually release an album in her true voice, but was not allowed to by her management. And also, this is apparently another reason she commonly lip syncs, as they're scared she would just try to sing in a normal voice on a concert or something like that.
Lip syncing is pretty commonplace in a lot of pop music.
Especially when you dance a lot, and she does.
Yeah. Britney's been called out for it a lot more than most other people, though.
Yeah, that's true. Also, that's the way you mentioned about the voice seems a bit very harsh. So that forced her to sing this one style. But I guess if it keeps the money coming in.
So now moving on to Britney's meltdown. So we were actually only 10 at the time. I remember it quite vividly. I don't know if you guys do as well.
Yeah, I remember it really well.
Yeah.
I remember being like on the papers and everything and thinking she'd gone mental.
Yeah, I don't remember it so much maybe compared to you, but I definitely remember it happening.
I think it goes to show just how big she really was. I mean, we were 10 years old. We remember it. I think pretty much everyone remembers Britney's meltdown in 2007, which is where all this conspiracy really starts to kick off. In the build-up to her infamous meltdown, she was going through a public divorce. And I guess in quite a similar fashion to Princess Diana, she was constantly invaded by the paparazzi. And in one instance, she was chased and followed by hundreds of them into a public restroom where they attempted to photograph her. They also videoed her in tears, asking them to just leave her alone. In one such event that shows just how ruthless the industry is, they went as far as filming her through the windows of an ambulance while she was naked, being taken away for her final mental health hold.
I think we said on this past, probably on the Diana episode, how vicious that the paparazzi can be, how they're foaming at the mouth to try and get like a glimpse of a celebrity in a vulnerable position just because it'll sell their papers.
Well, I've seen similar in my conspiracy, which we'll come on to, but with Paul McCartney on the day that he was On the day that John Lennon died, he is getting out of a car and instantly just hounded oh, what do you think of the news? What do you think of the news? And then same again when George Harrison died. Same again, just reporters wanting to get that first scoop, not giving him any space to breathe and stuff. So yeah, it's very common.
I think a lot of the time with Britney as well is it wasn't just a glimpse. They knew she was ill and they tried to kind of trigger something so they could, get the money shot of her kicking off or something like that, which is really sad in a way.
Mm.
So during her breakdown, she regularly locked herself in her home with her children. She shopped naked. And something that I didn't know, but I've checked out YouTube videos, and it's kind of funny. She spoke in a British accent.
Was it any good?
That's actually really good. She had an English grandmother, so maybe
okay.
grandmother can give her some tips on that front. As we touched on, I can imagine the intense pressure and scrutiny she must have faced, and that must have been intolerable and would probably drive most of us to the edge. Sadly, her mental state went even more sour, and she was hospitalized. After the hospitalization, where this starts to get really weird, her father petitioned to the courts to be a temporary conservator to her until she was mentally stable, and this was only meant to last for 1 year's time. What this means is that basically her father would control her finances and estate, and would also be in control of many of the business decisions that would come Britney's way. Now, this kind of relationship is often reserved for the severely mentally ill, including severe cases of dementia. However, the temporary conservatorship was changed into a permanent state in 2008, as Britney supposedly suffered from early onset dementia. Interestingly, in 2008, she was in her 20s at the time, which is an incredibly young age to be diagnosed with such an illness. Of course, we know that Chris Benoit, who committed a double murder-suicide, supposedly had the brain of an 85-year-old dementia patient in his autopsy, but Britney wasn't quite being Batista-bombed onto a mat.
Yeah. Also, his was a lot to do with steroids and things.
Yeah. And
there's actually a lot of mystery around his death, which would be, I think, maybe quite a good one to go over in a future episode. There's some really good conspiracies on it.
WWE conspiracies or
maybe.
Combat sports, not really the rest of the sport. Wrestling is a sport, but WWE is more of just an entertainment.
It's sports entertainment is what it's classed as.
And I think, as John mentioned there, a lot of Benoit's was linked to drugs. And so people have done the same here, and they're saying, was it some kind of drugs her father was shoving down her throat to control her? Because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Britney's been controlled for a long time.
Or maybe even just she tried to self-medicate with drugs, you think? It's a fairly common place when people have poor mental health. I've discussed in my theory about Kurt Cobain.
There's a lot of big rock stars who will have done a hell of a lot more drugs than her and certainly not experienced dementia symptoms at such a young age.
Obviously, we're not scientists, but dementia in your 20s, I think that's almost unheard of.
Do they not know what's caused it, though? They're not saying it was early onset Alzheimer's or something like that? Because dementia is only ever a symptom, isn't it? It's not a disease.
No, they haven't said.
Could have been made up, I suppose.
Yeah, it's quite secretive, but supposedly to get this permanent conservator relationship, her father took down the line that she had early onset dementia, because you have to be severely ill to get this status. Because, she's lost control of everything. And, this isn't a conspiracy. This is fact. It's gone through court.
So still to this day, she doesn't have control over her assets?
Correct. Yeah, her father is.
That's crazy.
Even today.
That's crazy.
So for a bit more context, under this conservatorship, Britney could not do the following things without permission. And if she did any of them, she would be sent to a mental institution. She couldn't drive a car. She couldn't vote. She couldn't get married. She couldn't have children. She couldn't spend her own money. She was not allowed to see how her money was being spent. She couldn't leave her home. She couldn't hire her own lawyer. She couldn't have control over her career. She could not speak about the conservatorship publicly. She couldn't do interviews that weren't scripted, and all final cuts were to be approved by her father. She couldn't use a mobile phone without being monitored. She couldn't use social media unmonitored. She could not contact anyone without them being monitored or having been extremely vetted. She couldn't go shopping. She couldn't go for a walk. So she needed permission to do all of those things. And if she didn't get permission, she'd be sent to a mental institution.
So who granted this? Was she signed off as mentally ill by a doctor and then the court granted it?
Yeah, that's correct.
It just seems baffling to me. Just doing, say, a normal thing, such as just going for a walk or going for a drive in a car, is enough to get you sent to a mental institute as a result of this judgment.
Well, there's people with serious dementia who don't even know who they are, who have more rights than that and more accesses than that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that just blows people's mind. As mentioned, this is meant to be reserved for the very seriously ill. However, since this conservatorship began 12 years ago, Britney has released 4 albums. She's done 3 worldwide tours. She did a 4-year Las Vegas residency. She was a full-time judge on The X Factor. She released multiple perfumes on a lingerie line, and also she made $140 million a year. So if she was so ill, it seems quite illogical that she would be working like this, considering that she's deemed so ill that she can't do any of these things of her own back.
Yeah, exactly. Can't go for a walk, but you can do all that. You can do a world tour.
And then on top of this, on January the 4th, 2019, so last year, her Las Vegas residency was cancelled after her father had a near-fatal colon rupture. 2 months later, Britney entered a psychiatric facility to focus on self-care amidst supposed stress from her father's illness. Now, apparently this was ordered by her father after she decided not to take a medication and violated rules in her conservatorship, specifically driving. So what it seems to happen here is Britney did not get permission to drive, and so she was sentenced to the mental health institution. So, I mean, this conservatorship was really that serious that, literally just driving, she's back in hospital, back in the facility.
That's ridiculous. I mean, given her father's also had this medical incident, it's still thinking, well, I've got to get this conservatorship, make sure I'm still on top of that. Don't caught Britney out driving right off the psychiatric institute.
I think the thing is he's in hospital dying, and he still doesn't want word out, so he's got to do everything he can to stop it.
It's going to get out at some point, surely. I think when he does actually eventually die. So you think that Britney would have come out and so maybe that'd be a massive announcement debate. See how lucrative that could be for selling your story.
Yeah. So this theory took another turn last week. Britney posted a video on TikTok, and on that video, a fan posted in her comments, "If you need help, wear yellow in your next video." This comment was actually massively upvoted, and it was using the hashtag #FreeBritney. In her most recent TikTok post, Britney is not only wearing yellow, but she emphasized in a caption that it was her favorite yellow top. It's actually the first mention of Britney like this. I mean, she's never brought up in a post before, oh, look, I'm wearing my favorite jeans or anything like that. So it's really sparked a lot of rumors on this side.
That is creepy. Either she's doing it to play up to it, like as a bit of a publicity thing, or it is very much a cry for help.
And yeah, not only this, the hashtag #FreeBritney movement has actually started and gained a lot of traction in the last few weeks, especially with a lot of this story coming out. And not only has it gained a lot of traction, what is even more damning is Britney's sister, the actress Jamie Lynn Spears, and also Britney's mother have both liked comments mentioning her father controlling her and trapping her. The fact they're liking it suggests that, they believe that to be the case, that their father's exploiting her for money, and he's used his conservatorship to do so.
I mean, I think if you're in that situation, like you wouldn't knowingly like comments that says something like "Free Britney" without wanting to try and draw attention to it covertly. You think is like.
I guess there could be some kind of injunction that they can't speak out about it, even though they obviously would want to. So liking these comments could be their way of letting.
Yeah, it's definitely still a conscious choice, not just randomly liking everything to do with Britney Spears. That's quite a specific comment to go and like.
So actually, the whole deal with controlling her assets is up for review. I think that's partially why it's in the news.
Okay.
Because it's the 22nd of August. It's up for review, so I think there's a chance, if the court agrees, that she gets it all back. I think is why it's gained a bit of traction.
Guess if that happens, it would be very interesting to hear what she has to say.
See what she says, yeah.
Save the date for that one for next time. There's no follow-up.
So, I mean, this whole theory is kind of a bit crazy. You've got her being controlled from a very early age, her father exploiting her for money and also practically causing her to have a mental breakdown, and then taking control of her and trapping her ever since through this legal route when, if she's seriously that ill, she shouldn't be doing these world tours and stuff like that. I can't imagine many dementia patients are out there singing to a crowd of like 50,000.
No.
Yeah, so what do you think? I mean, I had my mind blown by this, but do you think Britney is just crazy, or is she being controlled and exploited for money by her dad?
Well, I think there's a lot of detail in there that you almost can't argue against. Like, her dad, had control of all of her assets, and all these decisions had to be run by him. And by the sounds of it, that isn't up for debate. I don't know whether the finer details of it are, but certainly the assets and the money and the business side wasn't kind of in her hands. So it's a dodgy situation either way, because if you look at it in, I suppose, in quotes, the best possible light, it would be that she's actually very seriously ill. Like mentally ill. So obviously, as we've touched on, she shouldn't be doing, and she shouldn't be an X Factor judge. She shouldn't be doing world tours or anything like that. So even then, if dad comes out of it looking like an awful person who's exploiting his daughter for money, and then if you spin it the other way that it was I don't know, faked or over-egged, because she did shave her head, so I don't know what the explanation for that is, if the mental issues were fabricated for the purpose of getting this injunction thing.
I mean, I guess you could argue that she did have the mental breakdown, and that was caused either by her father or by the paparazzi. But then it gave her father an excuse to be even more controlling than he already was.
And people recover from these things. So it's not like a celebrity in public eye can have one breakdown and that's it. Like, therefore, never be trusted. That's never the case. Pop stars and rock stars have these kind of things all the time where they go a bit off the rails or whatever.
But she have a breakdown and still be physically able to drive a car and take a walk.
Yeah, especially 12 years later.
I feel like when you need permission to go for a walk, and if you don't get permission to go for said walk, that really means, they are genuinely worried that you're going to go out there.
You should be in an asylum. That's the rules they have to put you under. You clearly aren't safe to be living in public.
I think as well, something that I didn't mention, but it's definitely interesting side fact, is that I did mention that she can't contact anyone without them being monitored or being extremely vetted. So Britney Spears did actually collaborate on a song with Iggy Azalea, and Iggy Azalea said that when she did this, she had to have her house searched from top to bottom. So I think that is definitely interesting.
It's not the first time these sort of things have happened in music either. I know it's mainly the other way in terms of it's not always family, but it's like record labels having serious control over their artists.
Yeah.
But there was a very famous one with Kesha, and she was trying to raise the money to get out of her contracts, and I think she was being abused by a record label. And then similar things happened in K-pop, and then Prince did it. Yeah, that's really famous because they pass out on stage. And then Prince, for I think it was an award show or a performance, he wrote "slave" on the side of his cheek because he felt like he was being exploited by his record company, which led to the Blur drummer, he was called Dave, writing Dave on his cheek in the same writing. There's a bit of a jab at it. But
I think the thing is with these kind of things, like, for example, when I sign a contract at work, I mean, I don't read it. I don't think anyone does.
No.
When you're a musician, like, the record label could come out and give, a 120-page contract. You're not going to bother reading it, are you? And then next thing you know, you've signed up to do all these things legally not allowed to get out of. You're a bit screwed.
I think the X Factor and the Voice ones are very famous for that. If you win that, even if you get through to the live shows, they give you a massive contract and no one ever reads it, but it's actually pretty controlling. So yeah, I'll wrap up my thoughts on it. I think in terms of a conspiracy, one of the biggest pop stars, certainly of the 21st century, being controlled by a father and almost not really having a life at all. I mean, it's work for money. I think it's going to score very high, so I'm going to give it an 8.5 overall. For the believability, I think it's going to be high as well because, it's not really up for debate, the fact that she has no control over all her assets and things. And I suppose the Tik-Tok thing, you can read into it quite a lot. I mean, it seems quite obvious on the face of it that, that she's responded to a cry for help, but could be a coincidence, but I doubt it. So yeah, and the fact that it wouldn't be the first time this has happened, again, adds weight to it. So I think believability, I'm going to go for an 8.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sort of follow suit on this one. Just talking about the TikTok incident, it'll be very interesting to see if another comment pops up, seeing how popular the last one. Say, if you wear yellow, if you need help, if someone decides to try that again and tactic plays off, say, I don't know, wear a red sweater or something like that.
Someone puts, if you need help, wear nothing in your next video.
Well, you said she went shopping naked, so don't put it past her. But if it's all serious, if someone did say that again and it was to happen, I think that's when you think, okay, this is a coincidence. Just looking beyond that, that could be quite superficial if you're being critical. But the fact that it's legally binding contracts, whatever it is, that she's not in control of her assets, she basically has no autonomy over her life, and it's all down to her father. That's very worrying. Basically, if you think about her well-being, given all that she's been through, and also puts the believability for this conspiracy way high. I hadn't actually heard anything about this. I knew about her breakdown in the past, but I sort of, in my eyes, just faded from public. I wasn't aware of anything she'd been doing recently.
I was going to say, with all due respect, I didn't think she was really relevant anymore. Clearly, she's been propelled back into the limelight.
Yeah, now this, when you mentioned this date for the review coming up in August, does make a lot of sense now. So I think believability, I'm going to score a 7.5, and also my score overall, another high one. We go as high as a 9, just how shocking it is and how much it took me by surprise, I think, in honesty, and how deep it goes.
Do either of you watch Black Mirror?
Yeah, I do.
I've seen a few episodes.
Have you seen the one with Miley Cyrus?
No, I haven't actually.
I feel like this whole story really reminds me of the Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus. Basically, she plays a pop star who is drugged and controlled, by like her guardian. So it's quite similar to this, and I guess this conspiracy is very Black Mirror-esque in a way.
Maybe they're writing from experience or insider knowledge.
I mean, you never know. I think with this conspiracy, I think it's a really interesting one. You know, the fact that this is all kind of true, not the whole story, obviously, but the fact is we do know what is true is that she was placed under permanent conservatorship, yet she's still able to do all these things, which kind of suggests that she's not that severely ill, because most people under this permanent conservatorship, you know, they can't really feed themselves, they can't leave the house. And I mean, if you judge on X Factor, you're clearly not falling into that category, are you?
They're certainly not capable of doing a world tour and performing on stage several nights a week.
So I guess in some sense that does actually bring the conspiracy score down for me a bit, because it's not that much of a conspiracy and there's a bit of fact involved. I think the TikTok thing is quite fascinating though. It'll be really interesting to see where that goes. Like, maybe I'll finally bite the bullet and download TikTok and drop a comment.
As soon as we start recording this, I'm going to check that out and just have a look.
Something that's so blatant that she wouldn't just do it by pure coincidence. It's got to be, you know, wear a like Spanish football top in there if you're being controlled by your dad.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, though. There's rumours that the US are going to ban TikTok, so maybe her outlet could be removed. I hope go
See all
ahead
the
before
news
this
in the UK
day.
as well, with Chinese 5G and everything. It's mad.
I'm well happy about that.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I think it's so dodgy what the Huawei's been up to. So I think it's a good decision, despite being another U-turn. But we will leave politics out for this.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, overall, it's definitely an interesting story, and it sounds like, given that the review's in August, it's going to hot up even further, because if the review gets overturned, you know, who knows what she's going to reveal next. It seems like Britney Spears is kind of lives her life on the sleeve a bit, which is why she's being so heavily controlled by her father and why she's not allowed to give live interviews, and she has to kind of lip sync everything as well, just in case, you know, she does anything a bit over the top. So overall, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. In terms of believability, I mean, it's hard to look past the facts, really. She's almost definitely being controlled in some way, whether that's just her assets and business decisions, but, you know, whether her whole social media is being controlled by her team and her agents and her management kind of remains to be seen. When you think about it, the situation is really weird, because she was seriously mentally ill and kind of dropped off the face of earth in a way. Like, I don't really remember hearing too much from her in the last 10 years, considering she was one of the most famous musicians of all time. But, you know, she was still on X Factor and stuff like that.
I suppose it's in America, though. We're not watching US. I don't think we're watching US X Factor.
I mean, I'm not watching UK X Factor, to be honest.
Exactly.
You just can't look past it. She's doing all this stuff, so can't be that ill, and yet she's not allowed to do so much. That freedom and liberty in such a free country of America is being taken away from her. So.
It definitely suggests someone's dictating her movements or her actions.
So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on believability.